Let's go to number two. Number two is throwing out a number first.
Which you
And
kind
this
of
can
alluded to
cost you
already.
thousands and thousands of dollars, right? And really, what I always like to think about when it comes to negotiation, whether you're negotiating a salary or you're trying to buy a car or a house or something like that, the person who has the most information wins. That's what it is. It really comes down to that. So, as we said, number one, the employer already knows what their pay band is. They already know what they want to pay. They already know what other people in your industry are paying. And now it becomes a matter of figuring out what are you willing to accept to do that job if they like you. And usually, we talk about this in our course as well. When you get to the negotiation phase, generally the job is yours unless you are just so unreasonable in your negotiations and you guys just can't find common ground, right? If they come in and say, I'm going to pay you $20,000 a year to be a cybersecurity analyst, you're going to say, nah, thanks, I'm going to go elsewhere, right? Because if they're saying 20 and you're saying 100, there's no way you guys are going to meet in the middle. You're just too far off. But if you said, 100, or they said 100 and you said 120, you guys can probably find some middle ground and make it work. And if not, you'll go find another job somewhere else. But generally that's what you see. So when it comes to putting out a number, you don't want to be the first one to speak. I've had a lot of people, I've been talking the last couple of podcasts. We just hired a bunch of people in our company. We're up to 19 people. And most of the people that we've interviewed with have done a really good job of when I say, what do you think, what would you like to do for, what would you like to make for this position, of not throwing out a number first. So, as an employer, I hate that because it makes my job harder. But for them, it's great because, if they throw out a number, it could be significantly lower than what I'm thinking, right? And so you just never know what their number is. So I always like to go in with, let them give you the number first. It'd be great if the job position actually set a salary range, but that is very rare and very uncommon. I am seeing a big movement in the HR community and from the employees community pushing on HR to say, look, if you're going to post a job out there, you really should give us a pay band, right? I should know when I'm going to apply for this job if this is a $100,000 to $150,000 job or a $25,000 to $50,000 job, because if it's 25 to 50, you're wasting my time and your time having me apply for it because I'm not going to take that job. Right. If it's 100 to 150, then that's in the range that I'm willing to accept and I'll take that job. And so as we make this change in HR, I think it's slowly happening, but still today, if you go on LinkedIn, most jobs are not going to tell you what the pay range is.
Right.
What
and actually we're, and speaking of published pay ranges, we're actually seeing a phenomenon right now where I believe it's the state of Colorado has a law that requires employers to publish a pay range. And as a result of that, out-of-state employers who are advertising on national job boards are saying things like, candidates from Colorado will not be considered because they don't want to publish a pay range or pay band to conform with Colorado state law. So they're just excluding applicants from Colorado. So this is very interesting. And it tells me that that employers very much like the ability to not publish pay bands for these positions. And I think one of the reasons, you kind of said it a moment ago, actually, is you said, when you've been interviewing some people recently to grow your team, you're like, well, if they don't say a number first, it makes my job harder. And, I'm sure that's part of what's going on here. I wouldn't be surprised if there were other reasons that were maybe even a little less than fair. But that goes back to, internal equity and, pay equity and that sort of thing.
Well, I think also it comes down to, I've recently had a position. We hired 3 or 4, I think 4. We hired 4 people as interns over the summer, high school interns, as we're trying to build up more STEM positions for people and try to get them some experience so that when they go off to college, they can get, good jobs because they have some real world experience. And in those, we had to post a salary range. And so we said, okay, it's X to X per hour. Now, when an employer does that, both of us are reading that same position and we're thinking different things. The person who's reading it is saying, let's say we said, $10 to $15 per hour. The person reading it is going, this job pays $15 an hour. Me as an employer, I'm going, this job pays $10 per hour, right? Even though we said 10 to 15, right? And so we both have different ideas. And basically what we had said was, in this position, it is X to Y dollars per hour based on experience, right? The actual, once we interview you and we see what we're getting, then we can tell you what we think it's going to be. And I will tell you, even at lower paying jobs like $10 to $15 an hour right now, in that particular market that we were pulling in high school interns from, it was very hard to find it was very hard to not be at the top of that pay range, because I can tell you when I was down there a couple weeks ago, and I know you're going to Orlando soon, if you go into Chick-fil-A, if you go into McDonald's, if you go into Five Guys, they're paying $15 an hour right now to flip burgers.
Yeah.
Right. So, somebody who's actually would be taking a pay cut to come work for me, but they're going to be able to get some other things that they can't get at McDonald's. They're getting real world skills that put them into a real world position for a career, not for flipping burgers. Not that there's anything wrong with that. If you want to flip burgers, that's totally fine. But, but it is one of the things that they had to think about that from their side was, hey, I might be able to make $1 or $2 more an hour flipping burgers, but that's really hard work. It's sweaty. It's time consuming versus working for Jason. That sounds kind of fun and cool. And I get to do something technical. And that
By comparison,
so we didn't have a problem hiring, even though we were less than what they could have gotten working at McDonald's. Right. But that is one of those things that, when you throw out a range, and usually the range isn't going to say this job pays 50,000. It's this job pays 50 to 75,000. And the person reading that's thinking 75, the person who posted it's thinking 50. And sometimes you have to meet somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Well, so there's, my point is that there's all kinds of reasons why employees want to see a pay range and why employers may not want to share a pay range. And the point is that we're in a flux right now in the market where you've got some states in the United States actually requiring that employers disclose the pay range, right? And so the balance of power is kind of shifting. But one of the things that I think people listening to this podcast need to realize is that there is definitely an information asymmetry when it comes to negotiating. The employer knows more than you do, and that's why we're really focused on these 5 things. And so throwing a number out first can cost you thousands of dollars because of the negotiating phenomenons of anchoring, and there's all kinds of psychology here. The point is, the big takeaway is, the number 2 takeaway is, don't throw out a number first. Continue to not do that.